My name is Jeremiah, and this is my Thursday Thought. Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope your week has been amazing. I'm super juiced about the subject at hand. It's honestly one of my favorite topics of discussion, that being making change within familiar settings. When our settings, when our circumstance, when our relationships, our surroundings, when we've come to a place of familiarity and comfort, it can be the hardest thing to make change. Honestly, it's difficult to even recognize that change is necessary or even possible, let alone taking the steps that we need to take in order to bring that change to fruition. And I've found that there's a couple of reasons for that. Expectation being a big one. Relationally, we put expectations on people, and people place expectations on us. Honestly, it doesn't even take a long-term relationship. You can walk in Walmart, see the greeter, the demeanor, and all of a sudden you've established some level of expectation. Well, it's Walmart, so before you get in the car, your expectation is probably already set, to be honest. But the expectations that people have for us, sometimes it can be burdensome. Sometimes it leaves you just immobile, depending on what it consists of. If you have a family, whether they are thriving, they all went to the same college, and you're just struggling to some degree, or it's the opposite, where you are within a dysfunctional family and you just want more. There's something in you that wants more than what you've seen and experienced, but you feel trapped because your family has established some level of expectation for you. I also feel that exposure is huge. Exposure is a really big thing. I feel like when there's a limitation in your exposure, especially when you're younger, it can be hard to expect anything more than what you've seen. It was really cool that last week I went to a basketball game. My guy Bert hooked it up with a ticket. Good time. We got street tacos outside of a gentleman's club. That wasn't our intention. It just happened. Tacos were too spicy. Confession time. But it was dope being at that game, seeing just a bunch of people that are thriving in their profession, not just the athletes, but some of the people sitting courtside, to just recognize their humanity. It almost affirmed something within myself that said, you know what, you can also do some very dope things. And when you're exposed to just greatness, when you're exposed to possibility, it opens up just the option to change. However, when there is limitation, when you only know 5 feet one way, 5 feet the other, like it's just very difficult to believe, expect, or imagine that there is more in store for you. And you know what, honestly, we are oftentimes the familiar settings. We ourselves, we are the accumulation of our experiences as well as our decisions. So like we've seen day in and day out what we've been able to produce, and therefore we tend to establish a ceiling, and that ceiling can be super low for a lot of us. It can be super high depending on what our experience had been up to that point. And again, just one of those things that either it affirms the change that you want to make and you have plenty of evidence throughout your years of life, or there is a lack of evidence because honestly, I've experienced it for myself. Disappointed myself so many times, promised so many things, so many changes. 2017 is gonna be, you know what I mean? It can be really difficult choosing change. And there's also the whole "this is how I am" thing. That has become one of my pet peeves. This is how I am. It is so binding. It is so detrimental when somebody is just in agreement with this habit or this characteristic, this persona that doesn't, it may seem good, but it doesn't serve them. Like somebody who is constantly just giving everything to other people. However, they totally neglect themselves mentally, spiritually, what they need concerning their health. They're just giving. And although giving is good, it's like we need to serve ourselves. We need to love ourselves. And this person is just like, I know I'm hurting. I know I'm sick, but I'm still gonna exude this effort because that's just how I am. It does. Like I had a that's just how I am thing when I was it was actually pretty recently. I would always escape. Escapism, oh my gosh, loved it. It was amazing to me. When I would be hanging out with people, I'd be at events, and just random settings, and I would just bounce. I wouldn't say anything to anybody. I would just leave, and then I'd get texts, or people would be asking me, just worried, like, what happened? Where are you? What's going on? And I'd just be like, yo, I didn't feel like being in the midst of that. But honestly, I had to tie it. It took me some time, but I tied it back to the fact that I've been hurt relationally a lot. I was the very opposite. I used to hold relationships and things way too tightly. And as a result, I got hurt, and I came to a place where I held relationships very loose. And therefore, there was no growth. There was no, building myself up, putting myself in position to be mentored, blah, 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 all that stuff. But the whole, this is who I am, this is how I operate, it's necessary for us to check that so that we don't get stuck in some habit that was used to protect us before, but it's no longer serving us. So if this is you, if you feel like you want to change or you need to change, you've experienced that resistance every time you've attempted to do something better for yourself, there's a few things that I would suggest. Number one being changing your surroundings. If your weeks look identical to one another constantly, you're constantly just going through the cycle and just kind of on autopilot, just switch it up. One day go to a park, one day go feed some ducks, another just go hang out with a friend, something that you wouldn't usually do. And honestly, that can just trigger something in your mind and kickstart making change. Number two, constantly acquiring information. It's so healthy for our brain to just be learning things day in and day out. And we live in a day and age where information is extremely accessible. So there's kind of no excuse on that one. Number three, challenge your thought process, challenge your functioning, challenge the things that you've believed day in and day out. The whole, this is how I am. Sit down. I know it's unmanly, but I journal. Challenge yourself. Like, we can't just stick with the same thought process that we've had throughout life, because at one point maybe you adopted this thought or this way of thinking that served you, it protected you. However, when you get a little older, sometimes again it can be a form of bondage and kind of hold you hostage. So it's important on a regular basis to kind of challenge your thinking. Like, is this something that I want in my life? Is this detrimental? Is this serving me? But just taking the time to do that is very necessary. Hope you guys got something from it. I know I did, and I have. It's just one of the best things. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. You're awesome. Peace out.